Alrighty, so let's go ahead and kick things off. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world and where you're joining us from today. I'd like to welcome you to today's Data Plus Diversity event, which is a series that provides a platform for community conversations surrounding the challenges and solutions to diversity in data. Today's meeting is all about showing data pride and celebrating the impact and visualizations of the LGBTQ plus community. For those that do not know me, my name is Chantilly Jaggernauth. I'm the Vice President of Data Visualization and Training at Lovelytics based in Arlington, Virginia. I'm also the founder and CEO of the nonprofit organization Millennials in Data, where I work to bridge the data literacy and analytical skills gap by training, mentoring, and preparing millennials to enter a data-driven global environment. I'm also a 4-year Tableau visionary and member of the Tableau Equity Taskforce, and I'm excited to host today's event. If you have to drop early, the session is being recorded and we will share it with everyone after today's event. If you have any questions for our presenters today, please be sure to submit them using the Q&A function so that we can see them as they come through. And please do continue to use the chat feature to engage and get to know each other, and definitely tell us where you're joining us from. All right, so we have a full agenda planned today. Unfortunately, Jose, a member of the Tableau Equity Task Force, is unable to join today's event, but we are going to hopefully get them involved in a future event. We decided to do a quick adjustment, and I'll be stepping in Jose's place for a short interview led by Brandi Beals. Then we will hear from Lawrence Durbin, a BI analyst and DEI advocate, about Tableau and the LGBTQ plus community. Lawrence will be speaking on a lot of important questions like, are we building an inclusive culture for the LGBTQ plus community? Are we building visualizations with bias? Is our data excluding the LGBTQ plus community? Lawrence is going to address all of this and more during his talk. It should be a great conversation. Lastly, Brandi and Eric Balash, member of the Back to Viz Basics project, will be sharing some of their favorite data visualizations that use Pride data and how you can do the same. And a big thank you to all of our presenters for taking time to join us today. All righty, let's get right into it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for stepping in at the last minute. I'm really excited to get to know you a little bit better. I mean, I've definitely seen you around, but I don't think we've ever talked before. So I'm really excited to get to know you, a little bit about what you do and what the Tableau Community Equity Task Force is up to. For folks on the call who don't know me, I'm a Tableau user group ambassador. I help to lead the Milwaukee and Wisconsin Tableau user groups, and shout out to all my Milwaukee and Madison folks that I saw in the chat. I also run the Data Book Club, and I've been using Tableau for over 10 years. Currently, I'm the data analytics manager at an asset management firm. When I'm not doing data stuff, which is like all the time, I'm spending time with my wife and our 2 dogs. So that's a little bit about me, but let's jump into some questions. So Chantilly, thank you again for your time today. I'm curious what your journey has been like with the Tableau community.
Awesome. So I actually first started using Tableau in 2010 as a student at Howard University. And to be honest, I had no clue about the Tableau community. It wasn't until 2016 when I was interviewing for a role at Comcast that Josh Tabsley introduced me to the Tableau community. He spoke to me about Makeover Monday and the projects. That was the first time that I heard about a Tableau visionary, formerly known as the Tableau Zen Master. And it was at that point that I was like, okay, I want to be that, right? Like that's the highest, one of the highest recognitions within the community. How do I go about becoming a Tableau visionary? So I learned more about it. I actually found a mentor who was a Tableau visionary at the time, Pooja Gandhi, who also worked at Tableau, and she really helped me become more involved within the community. I started working on Makeover Monday projects. I started working on Vish for Social Good projects. I created my Twitter account, or my professional Twitter account, and engaged more with community members there, the Tableau staff as well. And then from there, I just grew to love the data fam. So I've been a part of the community for about 6 years, and I've been using Tableau for going on 12 years now.
Wow, that's just amazing. You know, this is your second year on the task force, right? So is there anything that you're looking forward to doing in the coming year?
Absolutely. I'm definitely looking forward to revamping the task force. We started it last year or 2 years ago, and there was a lot of change that took place internally at Tableau with Salesforce, and then just within the community in general. So a couple of months ago, we actually welcomed in a couple of new members, and we're just getting that ball rolling again. So we're laying out the roadmap for exactly the initiatives that we would like to work on this year. We're brainstorming, we're remapping our mission and our vision and making sure that it aligns with the current face of the Tableau community. So all in all, I'm just really looking forward to getting the ball rolling once again.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, it's an evolution, right? So that's great to hear. What are some of your favorite resources for people to learn more about building diverse, equitable, and inclusive communities?
So one, I'm going to absolutely give a plug for the Data Plus Diversity series. We host events on a regular cadence, and it's an opportunity for you to learn about a lot within a short span of time, right? We usually have guest speakers presenting on an important topic or the work that they've done involving diversity and inclusive communities. So I would definitely say step one, continue to join and watch the Data Plus Diversity series. And then step two, I know that for every organization that I've worked for, we always had employee resource groups that were available. So I always think that that is definitely a good step to getting involved within, your diverse community, especially at work, and learning more about inclusivity at work.
Yeah, absolutely. I know this is an interview about you, but just to interject a little bit, I feel like I really take on the mindset that you kind of have to be that change that you want to see. And, for me, being part of the LGBTQ community, I do try to make myself more visible than maybe I'm comfortable with, in order to maybe help people who are in that community who don't feel comfortable, right? Representation is really important. It's really critical. You need to be able to see yourself in people, see yourself in leadership and in people in the community. So it's not for everybody putting yourself out there, but I think if you're willing to do that, it really certainly helps others. So thank you for letting me interject. There are lots of people tuning in today. It's great to see how many people care about this topic. I'm curious, what should people reach out to you about?
I would say data literacy. Just to go off the point that you just spoke about, I started Millennials in Data because when I joined the community, I didn't really see the representation of myself in the community, a young Black woman. And I wanted to change that. So I had to become comfortable being uncomfortable and putting myself out there by creating my own organization that targeted millennials that were looking to come into the workforce, and show them that by understanding data, regardless of your background, you can have a successful future, like with Tableau or just within any organization, really. And data is the new oil, or really it's the new water, right? It's a necessity for organizations to grow. And if you can come out of school just having this skill set, not to talk numbers, you're going to get paid very, very well, right? So just going off of your point, if you want to, get to know me, or you want to talk about anything, I would say data literacy, millennials and data, and having an impact on the younger generation, and letting them know, even with some of these formal or traditional degrees, you can still incorporate data no matter the path that you decide to take, right? A liberal arts major, you can definitely still incorporate data in that degree. A business major, engineering major, data is everywhere. And no matter where you are, it's definitely an asset to understand and learn all things data.
Absolutely, 100%. You say millennials and data, right? I immediately think of like TikTok. Like, do you have do you talk about millennials and data on TikTok? That's like my final question.
As a millennial, I'm so I wouldn't say anti-social media, but it takes a lot for me to be on social media. Like, I'm not even good with checking emails or Slack messages. Like, not even gonna lie. Like, I'm barely on my phone. So I'm not your traditional millennial in a sense, but you know, I think I'll bring on my millennial siblings to help me out with the TikTok thing.
Sure, sure. We do actually have a question from the Q&A panel, which is awesome to see. So if you don't mind, I would love to throw it out at you.
Absolutely.
We do have a little bit of time. So and actually this is posed to anyone. So I'm gonna just ask the question. Chantilly, I'd love to get your feedback. But then I would also encourage people to like post their best tips in the chat. So does anyone have advice for starting an employee resource group? This person is starting one at their organization for the LGBTQ plus community, but I'm sure starting any sort of like employee resource group kind of comes with similar processes and procedures and just things to consider. And so I'm curious if you have any advice.
Absolutely. We're actually getting started at Lovelytics with our very own employee resource groups internally. So I would say with starting any group, you definitely want to have a sponsor or an advocate, somebody who's able to reach the masses, right? Whose voice is powerful within your organization, and you know that folks listen to them. So having one or two sponsors is definitely good. Then I would say don't tackle it alone. Obviously, you know, it's going to be a lot of work. So having other members who can help you, who can support you, who can, you know, help brainstorm ideas is also something good as well. Definitely speak to HR to know about any of the nuances that you have to consider with starting an employee resource group. And then also understand your target audience. Listen to, maybe take a survey in your workplace and listen to what individuals are looking to get out of an employee resource group, and then make sure that you tailor your employee resource group to meet their needs.
It's like you've been asked that question before.
I haven't actually.
Well, it was an excellent response. One thing I will add that I think is probably a little bit more of a nuance for the LGBTQ community is anonymity, which I know is like hard in an employee resource group, but I'm on my my company's LGBTQ plus resource group, and that is something that we think about. We're very sensitive to making sure we're creating a very safe space for people. And so there's kind of like this, I don't know, we make sure that everybody in the existing group is comfortable with a new member that's being added, making sure that there's not any issues there or concerns there. So I don't know if other groups have similar concerns, but I think for the LGBTQ plus community, it can be somewhat sensitive. So that's my only additional piece of advice. But thank you so much for the excellent question, and Chantilly for taking the time to answer some other questions from me today. I'll pass it back over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Alrighty, so I'm really excited to welcome our guest speaker today. Lawrence is a DEI advocate and incoming lead of the Denver Tableau User Group and leader of the recently launched Data Pride Tableau User Group. All of his work is driven by a core belief that groups, teams, and cultures that have multiple diverse perspectives and provide the safety for its members to be vulnerable will create the best solutions for any of the problems faced today. In his career, Lawrence has led global work streams to engage the LGBTQ plus community and provide understanding of the LGBTQ plus allyship, has revitalized employee resource groups across multiple areas of identity, and has used data to ensure that marginalized groups were included in global upskilling and reskilling efforts. And with that, I'll pass things off to you, Lawrence.
Thank you so much, and hello, everybody. So I'm super excited to be here today and talking on this topic. So as said, my name is Lawrence Durbin. My pronouns are he, him, his. And today, of course, we're talking about Tableau and the LGBTQ plus community. So first, just some background. So as in my introduction, I am a business intelligence analyst. I am leading both the Denver and LGBTQ plus the brand new Data Pride TUG that was just launched this month. I'm one of the brand new co-leads coming in to help with the DataFam community, DataFamCon community project, which I'm super excited to start working with. As I know, I am a diversity, equity, and inclusion advocate, and leading BRGs, revitalizing BRGs, leading global work streams on that as well. And then I've also done work with the Colorado LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce. When it comes to Tableau, I've used Tableau since 2018, and I've actually been part and really put myself into the community since last year. And it's been such an amazing ride. And so since I'm talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I do want to make an acknowledgement. And here on the left-hand side, I note the Wheel of Power and Privilege from Sylvia Duckworth. And with this, I want to make the acknowledgement that I'm sitting here as a white cisgendered male, and I have power and privileges being that in today's society across the globe. And, while I may be gay, while I am neurodiverse, and I have so many other marginalized identities within me, being white and being male gives me, power and privilege that even with my oppressed identities, I don't fully understand what it is to be across in marginalized fully. And so for me, I work to understand and hear what is needed by other communities and also give them, the voices and put that into practice myself. And so I'm not perfect and I don't know everything and I stumble, but I always work to learn more across the board and advocate in that end. And so I want to make the acknowledgement as well. We're talking about Pride Month and we're getting up into the anniversary of the Stonewall riots. That the first Pride was a riot. That we see today, Pride is the parades, it's happiness. It is, especially in Western, countries. But at the end of the day, Pride was a riot. It was started by transgender women of color. Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera are down in the bottom in this bottom picture. And that Pride is not just a month, it is all year round. And in so many countries around the world, being gay is seen as, is illegal, is seen with the death penalty, and so many things there. So I keep that in mind and understanding when we talk about the LGBTQ plus community. So why Tableau in the LGBTQ plus community? Why are we talking this? Not just because it's Pride Month. So let's talk, what do we mean by LGBTQ plus first? Let's talk about what is this common language that we have here. So as we know, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, the first, or questioning, are the first 5 notations here. And those have always been seen as the major ones that over the past few years, we've added the plus in conversations. You see it in LGBT plus or LGBTQ plus. And because there's so much more, that plus in the LGBTQ community is noted as those who are outside the societal straight norms. And when it comes, as we as humans learn more about ourselves, as we continue going forward, learning more about humanity as a whole, we start learning that there's more to human sexual orientation and gender identity than just, being gay, being gay or being bisexual, or when it comes to gender identity, being transgender, non-binary. And even there's also cultural significances in the LGBTQ community, but for certain groups. I note Two-Spirit here for the Native American and Indigenous people, as that has cultural significance to them and is included as part of the LGBTQ plus community. And so now we go more into the why. So when it comes, why Tableau? From a community, Tableau has over 1 million community members, as noted on the site, people who interact, the data fam on Twitter, and more. And data visualization and data analysis, Tableau is one of the powerhouses and leaders in doing that. So it makes great sense to talk about it together here. When we look at the LGBTQ population, we've got an estimated 20 million in the United States, and this has been reported through data and analysis from the US Census, household pulse surveys. And from a world population, different estimates from surveys put on like Statista and others estimate the global population as 8%. And that's not an insignificant number across the board. Representation matters. Representation is important. And so when we talk about data analysis, when we talk about communities, we need to understand that If we don't represent communities in data, that impacts healthcare, social services, finances, employment, and more. And the LGBTQ plus community spans race, culture, religion, gender, so many areas. And so it's not just one small thing that we talk about, one that is a thing that's in 1 month, it's overall. So it's huge. And so I also want to talk and come from an understanding that data, all of us who work with Tableau, look at Tableau, that data that is created that we work with is an artifact of human experience. There's more to the data when you fill out a survey, when you apply for a job, when you buy food. There is more than just the data that's there. There's so much behind the people and the reasoning and why they fill out the surveys, why they're applying for the job, why they're ordering those foods so much, why, they don't go out, or the human experience. There's so much to it, and there's so much around people when it comes to this. So understanding that data is inherently human, and there is more to it and contextually what we need to know. So let's talk about bias in data and visualization. This is the biggest thing, and that can occur. And bias occurs at any point in the life cycle of a dashboard, of a report, of analysis, of AI. This comes from requirements gathering, when first looking at what you need, or looking at surveys, or how you're pulling data, data input and gathering. There's, different biases there when people are putting it in, or whether people are reaching out to get data. In the cleaning, normalization, and training areas of data, before you even visualize it, there's the ability that the analysis is biased. The visualizations as a whole are biased, and from Tableau, that's definitely what we're going to focus on here. And consumers. Consumers can ultimately be biased in what they're looking at, what they are wanting, and so forth. So let's break these down. So requirements gathering and data input. Data is not requested or utilized. Not asking questions on the LGBTQ plus community, not looking at, adding those dimensions, not thinking about, not just having sex in a noted and gender, utilizing gender to mean gender identity, as well as what people were assigned at birth. What do we look here? How are we asking these questions? And how is that data actually being utilized? Or no transparency on usage and security. One of the things, that was talked about just previously around creating safe communities and providing that safety and anonymity is that when data is asked for, even if it's anonymous, is it truly anonymous? I think I saw something on, TikTok that kind of talks about, here's a survey. This is a unique link. We want you to add in all this different information. Does that mean that it's truly anonymous? You could probably pinpoint who it's to, as well as usage. If it's name level data, how many people have access? What's the security? What are we looking at? So there's no transparency. Thus, people aren't going to put in the data. In cleaning, normalization, and training parts, analysis is done with no understanding of context. And that means that certain people have certain experiences and understanding of society where they don't may see what certain things mean and clean it and, remove it. And cleaning and normalization, with that. And training data, if we go into AI, if we're putting in information, the samples are not inclusive. They're from the status quo. And that just feeds more into bias, because AI, applicant tracking systems, are trained on very specific things that they're looking for and can remove so many people. In visualization, binary colors, blue for men, pink for women, blue is more masculine, pink is feminine. Everyone else is like a green or something else. What are we looking at with our color choices? When we're grouping things, when we're showing bar charts or tables, when it comes to humans, we do male, female, other, or we do male, female, transgender, other. Or when it comes to sexual orientation, it's straight, then the LGBTQ community as just combined, and then other. There's no nuance in what we're looking at from the data. Single level, When you're looking at data, there's not additional dimensions. So we may talk about race, but what about data around race and LGBTQ status or race and gender? Because certain things may look great from one level, but there may be nuances to maybe where you're getting more in certain areas than others. And we see this with annual reports put out by, different companies and diversity and hiring. And of course, consumer usage. They're unaware of their consumers. They're unaware the data is available. They're very specific. They're looking for very specific things and certain answers. And of course, one of the things that I know that, I chuckle at, and I chuckled at it when I put it here, is export to Excel. Users want to handle the data and do the analysis no matter what you give them. And so that can introduce bias across the board. And so before I, look at how we can fix these things and, the different areas, I want to show just a few examples, just 2 examples as we talk here around inclusive visualizations. And not all of these are focused on humans. These aren't focused on, employment, HR data or things like that. They take a different change. The first one is pronouns versus gender. Individuals utilize pronouns to identify who they are, what their gender identity is, and that may not be the same as what, the legal gender markers are, or they're going through the process and it changes. I look at this Iron Viz final from last year's Iron Viz from Pradeep, and when the data that was shown had both gender and pronouns, and it didn't even seem like it was a second thought, but pronouns were used. And when I saw that, it was absolutely fantastic to me. It was huge that just seeing that while there was also gender, he decided to use pronouns. When I looked at, Twitter, who was talking about the Iron Viz, final as we were watching, so many people were noting it as well. And that was huge. And, I talked to different people who I know as well and showed them this. And I'm like, this is huge. And they agreed. And so just if you have that additional dimension, giving it that different look is inclusive and provides more inclusion. And, I talked about binary colors, and blue for, masculine or male, and pink for female. And this is a viz that I did for Back to Viz Basics. And I'm super excited that Eric, is talking about what they're doing there too, here later. But in this data set from week 2 of earlier this year, we only had 2 genders. We only had male and we only had female, and we had women and men. And a lot of the times when people visualize these 2 disparates, it's very different colors, not on the same platform. And when you look at masculine and men, those are more bold colors, women are lighter. And so this was one of mine that I did, and it just came to mind when I was looking for these color choices was I didn't use different palettes. I put everything on the same color. I, noted women as bold. I flipped that script. And if there were other gender markers in that data, they would have been part of the same palette. They would have been noted. They would not have been, put to the side as, oh, this is an additional thing. This is, brand new. It's all part of the same, when we're looking at these things. So color choice is huge, and flip it on its end. Don't look at the general, societal part across the board. And so we take these things from a visualization standpoint, we look at everything as a whole, and, we talked about the biases across the board. And so let's talk what are the things to do? How do we take, looking at just those things and those ideas in the visualizations, or how do we flip things on their head? And so in the different parts here, and I go back to the bias circle, in requirements gathering and data input, add LGBTQ plus questions to the forms, and not just, specific gender identities, but add more, add the gender fluid, add non-binary, add gender queer, add these things, because everyone in the LGBTQ community identifies differently and may use different things. And those labels and those boxes, the less you put, the more boxed and unseen people will feel. Include pronouns. HR systems are Slack HR systems have the ability to include pronouns. And so utilize that. Include pronouns when you're talking about things, when you're looking at things, and think about, should I be utilizing he, she in this conversation or in how I'm explaining this? Or like what I do anymore when I do any conversations is I default to they, because I do not know who the people that I am talking to are, or who these things are being addressed to. And from a global community, as we work globally, unless you talk to someone on the phone, they tell you, it's difficult to make assumptions. Be transparent on the usage and availability of data. If you're asking for a survey, how is it anonymous? Break that down. When it comes to availability and when it's line item data for companies that do self-ID, how many people have access to the data? How is it being used? As we noted, in countries, and actually in the United States as well, people need to feel safe and that data isn't going to be used to discriminate against them. In over half the states in the United States alone, people can be fired and discriminated against on employment and housing. And healthcare, that's huge. Including normalization and training. Involve the community in the analysis, reach out to people, build a diverse team, get those experiences. You don't add societal understanding. And when you're doing training or looking at it, ask, does the majority of information overwhelm the minority? Does the overwhelming information here that's going to train this data or train this AI or that we're going to show, does it actually overwhelm the minority, yet the minority parts of the data actually need to be seen and have huge input? When it comes to visualization, ask, is the design inclusive of all? Not just around the LGBTQ plus community, but all communities. I think back to the previous Diversity Plus, Data Plus Diversity series in the conversations with Adamiko and Hunter around, autism spectrum, those who are autistic and neurodiverse and the colors there. Think about colorblind. The colors, is my design inclusive there? When I type things, if I'm doing field, free from text, am I using specific pronouns? Those type things. Should I group these? Should we be grouping all these other gender identities and or sexual orientations into one lump because there's so many different, identifications, or should they be broadened? And should we be showing these? And does a different or additional dimension give more detail? I talked about, diverse and annual reports. When we look at race as a whole, if we break it down by gender, or if we break it down by gender and LGBTQ status, or if we look at race and LGBTQ plus, what does those numbers show? We may be doing well overall, but are we losing people, and are we not inclusive in those areas? And when it comes to our consumers, at the end of the day, all of these go into train on the data and explain the why. Provide the analysis. They may not know. As we build dashboards, as we look at things, provide analysis on specific areas and, show them that. Include all the data when you have the ability to export, when you are providing those type of things. Train on it as well. What's the data? Where do we have it? And explain the why. Why are we showing this? Why do we include this? And more. And in the end, there's always going to be ways to learn. And around the globe, there are major organizations, HRC, it gets better, Pride Circle in India, there is so many different major organizations that provide feedback, that provide information. We have white papers, Tableau's Do No Harm Guide. The HRC has white papers on how companies can implement ERGs and how companies can implement, self-ID and bring in that data and what the need for representation is. Deloitte just released LGBTQ plus inclusion at work, a global outlook around information and workers and employees. There is so much across the board. Local organizations, reach out and learn from your local, LGBTQ groups. CenturyLink has a huge network of local LGBTQ groups. Look at small businesses and the National Lesbian Gay Chamber of Commerce. Meetups, community events, diversity plus data, you learn more. I know, the Data Pride user group, there's meetups, there's more. and your company, DEI, HR, your employee networking groups. Ask the questions, learn more, join those things, learn about the experience and more. And so at the end, as we go through, I look at just some items to remember. Data is an artifact of human experience, that the data that we're receiving has a human with so many different experiences and more behind it. Involve the communities, build diverse understandings. That's diverse teams, diverse, analysis, ask the questions. Nothing is done well in a vacuum. For me, this presentation today was not done in a vacuum. The template, and I'm not a huge graphic designer, the template was done by an amazing friend who is part of the community as well. And, understanding of data is done from mentorship and asking questions. And my understanding of DEI has always evolved. Nothing is done in a vacuum. And also understand that Pride was not and is not what we see it as now. It is not just the parties. It is not just, the parades and all that. It's started as a riot. It is working towards equality for all. And there are so many communities in the West and across the world that really, are still fighting. And it's all year round. It's not just a month. So super excited. Thank you all. I'm super excited to give this presentation and talk with you all today. And so I think
I'll open it up for any questions. Thank you so much, Lawrence. Really great presentation, very insightful. I'd like to open it up to the audience for any questions that you all have. And then if the audience doesn't really give us anything, I have some questions that I'd like to ask you, but it seems like we have two that actually came through. So one from an anonymous attendee. When you are looking at something where you often can't break the data down by categories of race, ethnicity, gender, because the numbers get too small, especially if some data is missing. Ideas to deal with this.
So I think it's understanding and showing that if, it is rare, you don't have those breakdowns, still show, because even smaller numbers have some significance. We think from a statistical standpoint that, those are outliers and more. Still show it and note those, outlines and note those outliers and more, and provide analysis and show. You may have a broader view that you're looking at from the larger, what is actually there, but it still provides insight into your data as a whole and gives you more info. So, and note it.
Absolutely. Fantastic presentation from Tyler. How can individuals get more involved in the Data Pride user group?
Definitely. So we're looking at, I believe I have it on the schedule and getting ready. So our first event is going to be next month in July. Date fell out of my head. But if you go to, and I believe they can be shared in the user groups.tableau.com. If you look up LGBTQ+, you can register there and subscribe. Reach out to me if you have questions, if you want to help. We're still getting this off the ground as a whole, and keep going.
Awesome. And I believe Alyssa put the user group link in the chat if you'd like to check that out. So as some more questions roll through in the audience, definitely feel free to ask those in the Q&A. I have a couple that I'd like to run off. All right, so is there anything that comes to mind or stands out that we as a broader data community can do better to elevate the Tableau experience for the LGBTQ+ audiences?
So I think for me, the first thing, that can elevate as a broader data community, elevate Tableau, is having more conversations like this. So talking about, the LGBTQ community as included in broader diversity and more, I think, and I'm super excited for Eric, again, the Back to Viz Basics for 2 of the weeks this month is putting data around the LGBTQ community. And not only are you learning more about Tableau, but the first one was around the acceptance of homosexuality around the world. This next one is talking about corporations and, where they fit within being understanding and inclusive, their policies and more from the HRC CEI. And so thinking about that there is that additional data can elevate that and just, keep keep the conversations going. Every single group, and it's not just the LGBTQ plus group, but and the community, but there's a lot more conversations that we can have in understanding of diversity across the board. And when we look at data, we have to understand that there is that nuance. So keep thinking on that.
Absolutely. And I'd like to resonate with that point of keeping the conversation going, right? It doesn't have to be a conversation that only comes up during a particular month of the year, right? We need to have this conversation continuously throughout the year, every single month, right? So I absolutely agree there. Do you have a story or moment that left an impact on you or your audience about the importance of engaging the community?
So there's definitely a lot of stories and a lot of moments that I think about. And I talked about, earlier when the usage of pronouns over, gender in last year's Iron Viz. And for me, actually, this is one that hits home for me is, as I was working, I was at IEM, I was leader of the BRG, I was out and open and would talk about it. And it was part of my life there and what I did. And for a year, for several months, I had an intern. We had high school interns that we were working with. And at the end of it, the thank you note, and I still have it, was talking about how they saw me with being myself and being out and open and just, engaging the community and talking about it was huge and helped them. And so, engaging and talking, that story hits me personally home. And I still think about it. I'm like, it made me feel good that I made some difference. And it's, asking more. And when people ask questions, when they show as an ally, that hits a lot.
Absolutely. And the point that you just made resonates with the point that Brandi made earlier about putting yourself out there, right? Being comfortable with being uncomfortable, because you honestly don't know the impact or the difference that you are going to make on somebody else. So that's really great. Another question from the audience, anonymous, any tips on how to be inclusive in data that is generally gathered quantitatively? For example, gender, what answer choices to provide? And would an answer choice of other with an open text field be appropriate and inclusive?
Definitely. And so that's huge, because when we're looking at aggregates, when we're looking at, those type things, when it comes to gender, those drop downs, or when you're asking, providing the other option is huge. And because gender identity and sexual orientation are always fluid. And so providing for people to provide the labels that they see fit, but then also people can also abuse that and provide, their very unique decisions on how they want to fill that out. But it's taking an understanding, going to resources like the HRC, It Gets Better, all these, the Trevor Project, more that have the notations on gender identity, and, adding that in the freeform field, adding that because those are consistently updated. And, don't put as prefer not to say. If you're going to have only a few options, don't do prefer not to say or other. That kind of shows that you don't want them to say if it's something that's not there. And so think about that. But also, the open field, think about what the abuse of that can be, but it would also be a huge helper.
Absolutely. Another question from the audience from Jared. When trying to increase inclusivity support from a diversity value perspective, what are some critical intersections that you have seen in data that add transparency to the LGBTQ plus data points you've discussed?
So, and I hope that I'm understanding and reading this right, and, understanding this. So inclusivity report from diversity value, it's look at all the diverse populations as a whole and adding it in, because when you look at diversity on race, and like I said, you don't see race and gender, and yet you could be hiring a lot of women and you could be hiring a lot of people of color, but broken out, you're losing people of color, and you may be losing specific groups of people of color that are women, or are LGBTQ, and thinking about that, and also looking at their careers and where they're at. Are you actually, what's the diverse pipeline that you have in your company if you're helping people grow? If we start looking at these areas, we can have more understanding and better solutions. We don't have these numbers. We don't have the people in leadership or technical skills. I think of the wisdom of crowds. That's one of the biggest things for me, which is, diverse populations, more opinions from that. So I hope, I answered that from an understanding from my end. So I don't know, and looking at that.
Okay. From Joshua, what are things that get in the way of designing a properly messaged DEI database? And I know you touched a lot on this during your presentation.
Yes, and I think, for this one, it's in the way user requirements, they want very specific things and people don't think of how they can add it. A lot of groups are, grinding groups. It's like, here's the requirements, here's the data, here's what we want, give it to us. And it's a perpetual cycle, but we can't add in the insights. We can't look at the data even more when doing those visualizations. So we have a hard time not just filling the requirements. And so that's, one of the things that gets in the way, as well as, the color palettes from branding. If you have to use very specific color palettes, or they don't have it from colorblind, some companies, or they look at it that way. Some companies, really hurt from that end.
Agree. And when you talk about the user requirements, I think it's really like sometimes the bias in the user requirements, and they don't even know about that bias that they're putting on you as the developer. So I totally agree there. From Dawn, hi Lawrence, thanks for your presentation. Interesting that you revert to the pronoun they rather than make assumptions. Would you therefore recommend everyone displays their pronouns? We have it as an option at my workplace, and I opted not to as a cisgender female.
So yes, so I revert to they because from a global perspective, understanding of who individuals are just by names and an email is huge. I put my pronouns in my signature. I put my pronouns everywhere so that people can also feel open to providing their pronouns. One of the things is, if you show that you have an understanding, here are my pronouns, they give the opening for people to say, these are my pronouns. My pronouns are he, she, they, sie, them, zir, they, them, there, and across the board. So it gives that opening. So I always say, put your pronouns everywhere, put your pronouns. And it as well, if there are situations where people don't know their pronouns, or you have that, if you revert to they, and because you don't know, and don't make the assumption at that point.
Absolutely agree. A few more questions from Jared. Do you think that LGBTQ plus folks are pigeonholed? This is a very select group of people. How do we encourage, like we have with STEM in the past, young queer people to engage in something as important as big data?
That is huge. And there's a lot, when it comes to, we look at STEM across the board, and for LGBTQ plus individuals, they're everywhere. And to encourage them to get into big data would be to talk about it, provide conversations where we're talking about data here today, where we're talking about those, look at those groups and talk about how that diverse understanding that they bring from their experience across the board is important and helps. And that goes into working with groups like OSTEP, bringing in big data, maybe creating things that are focused on LGBTQ and data. And that's one of the things that, I hope with the LGBTQ plus tug is not only that we talk to the existing Tableau groups, but we start creating those connections where we start talking more as what is the importance of big data, and get people more interested across the board, and start that, across the board, STEM and more needs to be starting, and those conversations need to be started earlier across the board, no matter where we're talking about, instead of in high school or later on when people find it.
Absolutely agree with you there. And our last question from Marnie, I hope that's how you say your name. Sorry if I messed it up. How do you recommend addressing bias that comes from the requirement/stakeholder perspective? Usually they are not even aware that they are contributing to the problem and can become defensive when things like these are brought up.
So I think, and that's a great point. And, you know, it's looking at what their requirements are, looking at and understanding the data that you actually have. If it's data that you have and that you know, understanding what's there. When it comes to visualizations, we as the teams that do the work, or as the people, are the ones that take their requirements and should be putting our spin on it, putting our understanding. And that means taking their requirements and giving it a spin and noting, you know, here's this other data, and not saying 100% no, we need to think about this, and this, but showing them it, and just showing them it without giving them the option to say no. In some of those cases, is take their requirements, do what they want, but give them the additional, and talk. And also, when talking about the team that you're working on, what you do, and more, is understand that we look at things from these different perspectives, and that your requirements, we understand what you want. Here's, you know, a wireframe, here's what we're thinking, but here's some additional data that can help, and providing those things there, I think, are some of the best.
I couldn't agree with you more there. And that's just with bias and requirements all around, right? I even see it with selection of visualization types, right? The user comes in and say, we must display the data this way. And you as a developer, you know, all right, this is probably not the best way to display it. So as you mentioned, I definitely do the same thing. I go ahead and I create exactly what they're looking for. And then I also have an option. Of course, it is a little bit more work to show them an additional way that you can display this data, right? A better way of displaying this data. And also take it a step further sometime. And I do a little bit of research, and I provide them with the information from the masses, right? Because there are times where your stakeholder, they just think of you as the developer, right? You know, just taking orders sometimes from doing as they ask. You know, they forget that this is from work that we've done. We've had this experience. So sometimes they want to hear from the experience of others. So if you include that as well, you know, in addition to the requirements that they're asking, I find that can also help and go a long way. With that, thank you so much. Oh, go ahead, Lawrence.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying that I agree 100%, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and offering ways that we within the Tableau community can better elevate and engage with the LGBTQ plus community. I'm especially excited to hear about the launch of the Data and Pride Tableau user group. And now I'd like to transition things over to Brandi, who will highlight some data visualizations that celebrate the LGBTQ plus community, and Eric, who will share a bit about the data visualization challenge that's currently underway that investigates equality at Fortune-ranked companies using simple maps. Brandi, I'll have you take it away.
Thanks so much. As mentioned, I'm going to be showcasing some awesome visualizations that are out there. My preparation for this segment was to actually go out to Tableau Public and just search for Pride Month or LGBTQ+, like all sorts of different keywords, to find some awesome visualizations that are out there that speak to the community. So I'm just going to share some of my favorites today. And I would love for you to comment on them as well in the chat. All right. So the first one here is by Frederick, and you know, it's pretty simple, right? The 10 best gay prides in the world. And I love, obviously, that it's a rainbow. That's absolutely wonderful. And it uses the original colors from the rainbow flag. So there's all sorts of history about like the symbolism behind the colors of the flag. And the original flag that was created in like the 70s included the hot pink and the turquoise color. And they stand for, I believe the pink stands for sex or sexuality, and the turquoise stands for magic. Those actually had to be removed from the flag because at the time it was really hard to find like hot pink fabric. And so the flag has just evolved over time, and the new flag are kind of, I mean, there's all sorts of different flags. So if you're interested in flags about the LGBTQ community, it's a quick Google search away. But the kind of common flag that you see these days actually incorporates colors for the transgender community as well as people of color. And so that's kind of my preferred flag. So anyway, I just like the throwback colors, I guess. But when you hover over each section of the rainbow, it actually tells you a little bit about what those kind of top pride events are in the world and a little bit about them. So New York is number one because that's where pride was born, with the Stonewall riots. And then you can just kind of hover over each one of these sections to learn more about it. And I think what I really loved about this visualization is, one, it's simple, but it's also really, it's global. So we see South America, North America, Europe, all represented here, Sydney, Australia, and so on. And so this is just, I just absolutely love the broad global impact of this. But that's not all that this dashboard has to offer. The section at the bottom here, okay, if you guys are curious, we'll just go through all parts of the rainbow. So we've got Tel Aviv and Johannesburg. So I definitely learned a lot going through these of just how broad these various pride events are. So that was pretty cool. And then the last one is because Canada. So, so that was just really cool to see, again, the broad expanse of various pride events. But in addition to the best gay prides in the world, there's also the largest LGBT events in the world. And this is a bar chart. And we see Sao Paulo and New York and Madrid, and these are actually different events and the years that they occurred. So you can see Madrid is on here twice near the top, and this third bar is actually for 2017, where 3.5 million people attended this festival. And then this one is from 2007, where 2.3 million people attended. So I kind of like that. You just see the sheer impact, right, of how many people attend these events. I just feel like that's really powerful for me. I do appreciate that the information about what the best gay prides are is the source of that data is documented. And then the source for this bottom table is from Wikipedia. And so that's also called out here. So I really appreciate all of that. And Alyssa actually shared the link in the chat, so you can go and explore that on your own as well. But yeah, I just really like the simplicity of this. Something to note, if you, goodness, if you're in New York or San Francisco, you probably know this already, but Pride is coming up this weekend. So perfect timing. And London Pride is next week. So the other dashboard I wanted to, there are lots to explore, but I also really enjoyed this dashboard. It's very text heavy, but it's broken up into sections, which at first was a little overwhelming, but it actually becomes easier to read, I think, in these little segments, right? And so this talks about Title VII, Civil Rights Act. And, I love this button that you can actually click it to actually go and read it if you are interested, right? providing that context is really helpful. I even like this, I really like this little timeline. It's very simplified and leverages the rainbow colors. Oh, sorry. Obviously I had this queued up and then Tableau Public thought otherwise. But I like that it kind of walks the user through all of the different components that have kind of led to, what we know today as the Civil Rights Act. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then, this quote I thought was also really touching, and I like the colors leveraged here, but, only the written word is the law and all persons are entitled to its benefit, I think is just pretty powerful. So, I mean, there's just so much to explore here, and you're not here to have me read a dashboard to you. So I highly encourage you to go and take a look at this. But then this chart at the bottom actually shows what this impact looks like. So before the kind of recent changes to the law in the US, here's kind of what the rights for somebody who is part of the LGBTQ community looks like. Many states, protected neither sexual orientation nor gender identity for employees. Some, I'll pick on my Wisconsin here, only protected for sexual orientation. It was protected in both public and private organizations, but it only protected a segment, right, of the community. And so you can kind of go through and explore what that looks like. And the after, you can see all sorts of rainbow, right? Rainbows everywhere. So I just felt like that was really powerful, I guess, for me. So highly recommend going in and reading more about this and exploring it. I do find it very interesting, right? So definitely check it out. The last viz I'm going to show is actually this one. I'm going to just reload this page before Tableau Public does it for me. But this one is by Eve Thomas. They do a lot with Data for Good, I believe. So I came across this, and again, there is some text at the top. We've already mentioned Stonewall, right? You can't have like an LGBTQ event without talking about Stonewall. But what I thought was really, I guess it's something I hadn't seen before, was the actual like timeline of the few days around that Stonewall riot, what led up to it and what transpired afterwards. And so before the Stonewall riots even happened, right, like police arrested Stonewall employees and confiscated alcohol, right? So it kind of like talks a little bit, sheds some light on what led up to the event. I thought that was really not something you see all the time. And just kind of breaks down like exactly what happened, right? Bottles are thrown, police retreat and barricade themselves inside of Stonewall, right? Stonewall and it like reopens and there's more clashing. But then it becomes like this gathering point. So just a lot of really great background. But the viz continues, and there's this little rainbow road, they call it, that breaks down various events that have happened between 1970 and 2021, when this dashboard was last updated. And so what you can do is come in here and click on each one of these dots and learn more about, what happened in that time frame. So this was like the 1st March in 1970. So, just a year after the Stonewall riots, right? And that was the first Pride March. The year after that, you've got Pride marches in all sorts of major cities, including my hometown, Milwaukee. And the following year, we add some additional cities as well. So I'm not going to take you through every single one of these dots. I highly recommend that you do that. This dot, though, does talk a little bit about those colors that I first started rambling on about. So you can always learn more about the flags as well. But I feel like the way that this is laid out is just kind of brilliant, right? Each click kind of presents more information to you in these little tidbits. So very cool. Highly recommend you come out here and explore it even further. But the final kind of chart that exists on here talks about, where we're at today. So, kind of getting that background on how Pride really started and what it looks like today. And by today, I mean last year. So you can see that it's celebrated. Pride is celebrated in 67 countries. And you can kind of see each heart represents a country and when that country first celebrated a Pride event. And so you can just kind of come in here and explore the global impact of Pride and when that first Pride was celebrated. So I just felt like it was really cool just to kind of see the evolution of Pride and give a little bit more of a history lesson, I suppose, but in a very fun, engaging, interactive way. I really appreciated that. So those are just a few of the vizzes that I wanted to highlight, but I'm going to actually turn it over to Eric to talk about his, Pride data challenges that he's working on.
All right. So I want to thank everybody for inviting me here today, and from Chantilly and Lauren so far, and thanks to them for hosting this event and inviting me to speak on Back to Viz Basics and the topics that we have for this month. So my name is Eric Balash. I'm the manager of data visualization at Lovelytics. So lucky enough, I get to work with Chantilly every single day. So we'll go through what Back to Viz Basics is, how to get involved in the community project, different topics that we've covered, and then we'll look at our, some of the current and future outlook for the project. So quick about me. In addition to working with Chantilly at Lovelytics, I also get to train with her for millennials in data. So if you're interested in that program, definitely check it out. It's a great way to kind of up your skills on Tableau and SQL. Other than that, I have 3 viz of the days. I'm a Tableau Public ambassador. If you're not on Tableau Public, if you're not on Twitter, I definitely suggest getting involved in those 2 platforms. It's a great way to get involved in the Tableau community and start to, increase your skills with Tableau and share your work out with the community and just start to get feedback so you can really take your Tableau dashboards and skills to the next level. In addition to that, I currently run the Tableau Student Guide and the founder of Back to Viz Basics, and we'll get into all of those. So how did this start? Once upon a time, there was a Tableau student ambassador by the name of Maria Brock, and in learning Tableau, she eventually had about 50 tabs opened up on her browser of YouTube tutorials, blog posts from others in the community, the Tableau forums on answering questions, right? All of these different resources are out there. And for someone that was new to Tableau, she was struggling to find a resource that was kind of that one-stop shop for everything that you need to know about how to get started and just, who's who in the community. So she created this website called the Tableau Student Guide. You can go to that. It's the tablewstudentguide.com. And there's a lot of different sections on there about how to get started. So what is Tableau? What are the different products? How can we connect data? Building basic views, which is kind of what led me to start the Tableau community project Back to Viz Basics. So building out bar charts, using Show Me to create different charts within Tableau. What is Tableau Public? How can we get involved? What is it? creating that online portfolio for you to share out your visualizations with others, how to connect with the community. So we just learned about different Tableau user groups that are out there. Where is the Tableau community? A lot of us are on Twitter sharing out our visualizations. A lot of people have blog posts where they post different how-tos and different things that they've learned in Tableau along the way. There's a section for resources, so data sources, other forum questions, basically everything that you might be looking for in terms of just getting started with Tableau. And finally, student interviews. So how are students starting to use Tableau? We have some interviews with folks that were introduced to it in college. Myself, I was introduced to it during an internship, and it's changed everything about my career for me. So hold Tableau close to my heart. So yeah, she wanted to create this website that just had all of these different resources located in one spot. So if you're new to Tableau or you know somebody who's starting, you definitely want to share this out with them. So from there, Maria started to move on to some other things, and she wanted to pass the Tableau student guide off to someone and chose me. So happy to take that off of her hands. But in taking it over, I wanted to kind of add my own part to it. And at the time, we know about some of these other Tableau community projects: Makeover Monday, Workout Wednesday, Sports Viz Sunday, Project Health Viz. There's Data FamCon that Lawrence mentioned. There's so many different community-run projects by individuals. Just they don't work for Tableau. They're just like all of us, really passionate about data and Tableau. So they want to create a project around a specific topic. And so when Maria passed it off to me, Makeover Monday was ending at the time. And so I wanted to kind of find a project that lended itself to those that were newer in the community, starting out with Tableau, really, just kind of focusing on one simple thing at a time. It's kind of the whole basis of the Tableau student guide and building those basic things and just getting started with Tableau. So that's when I came up with the idea for Back to Viz Basics. So what is it? Getting started with Tableau can be really tricky. Someone that never had any formal training, I started to drag things over, and all of a sudden I had all of this data art going on, and wasn't exactly sure how to create a simple bar chart. So really, Back to Viz Basics was started to help solve that problem, focusing on one thing at a time. So the example here is our very first task was just creating a simple bar chart. So we had people create all different kinds, but really just focusing on a really simple data set and building out a very basic bar chart. The who, so it's not just for new users, it's also for experienced users, so for everybody. If you just downloaded Tableau, if you're new to the community and you want to get more feedback from those in the community and just start to work on some of those different Tableau skills. If you need help building basic visualizations or you just have no idea where to start, this project is for you. If you're like me and you create that data art when you start dragging things all over and you're not exactly sure what you created, this is a great project to get involved in. For those that are experienced users, if you're a Tableau visionary ambassador, if you've been using Tableau for more than a year, 3 years, 10 years, we definitely want you to get involved in this project because we all learn from each other. So while you might be creating something that's more advanced compared to somebody that's new, those newer folks are learning from the work that you've just created. So I know that's how I've learned, downloading someone else's viz and picking it apart and saying, oh, I can create that. That's a unique way to create a bar chart that I didn't know existed. So definitely want everybody to join in this project. It's not just for new users. The why, like I said, Tableau can be really tricky. So the point of this is to really focus on one thing at a time. So in this visualization, we were working on building scatter plots. And what I like is that we've used colors purposefully and for reinforcement in this dashboard. So coloring out specific things within a viz to show the highest win rate, to show the lowest win rate, or the most seasons coached. Working on choosing the right font type. So making sure that our dashboards are accessible in terms of color and font. Trying to stick to the same font that's a legible font throughout the dashboard. Working on editing our formatting pane. So do we need all the grid lines on a dashboard? Do we need to show tick marks? Should we add in a reference line? So focusing on those little things instead of trying to build out a huge dashboard. And then we can also from there start to understand data and visualize trends a little bit better because we're focusing on one thing at a time and you're not tasked with building out an entire dashboard. Then overall, just keeping things clean and simple. We don't need to overcrowd our dashboards with tons of filters, unwanted text, really starting to leverage that white space and just learn about creating a successful format and layout within our dashboard. The how. So here's how you can participate in the the challenge. So you can follow me on Twitter at Ready Set Data, or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm also on there for those that don't want to get Twitter. Or you could go to the Tableau Student Guide website, and there's a tab there for Back to Viz Basics. So those are all the ways that you can see that the data is being posted. Then you'll want to create an account on data.world. Data.world is a platform that many of us use to post our data. So Back to Viz Basics is on there, and that's where I'm posting the actual data that you can download. Also on there is the prompt, so you'll want to read that. So once you create your account on there, you'll have access to my page with all of the data from the past challenges, and then you can read the prompt and understand what we're visualizing for that week. So then you want to download your data, connect it to Tableau, go ahead and read the prompt. It'll tell you what to do, how to get started with the data, maybe some information about the data that's important. And then you want to go in and viz your data. So if we're working on building bar charts that week, stick to that chart type. Think about how you can, kind of keep it simple and really focus on the small things within that chart. Then when you're done, share your work. If you're looking for feedback, tweet out that link to your dashboard and ask for feedback from the community. But post on LinkedIn, put it on Tableau Public. There's also a submission tracker on the Back to Viz Basics website, so make sure you're filling that out, because we have a dashboard that tracks all submissions. That's kind of this big repository of all of the Back to Viz Basics participants right now, and you'll see that in just a second. So it's kind of a great way to go in and see all the different bar charts that were created that week, or all the different types of scatter plots. The schedule, so we operate on a kind of a 2-week basis. So typically get the data posted on a Sunday or Monday. Then, you don't have to stick to this timeline, but it's just kind of the timeline that I like to work with. That way I can get things out on a regular cadence. But you'll have a whole week to viz whatever the prompt is for that week. Then during the off week, that's when we're gathering submissions, we're taking a look at them, we're working on rolling out kind of a new review process, whether that's a YouTube review or just a short blog post. We're working on the best way to keep up with that. But then after that, the cycle repeats. So like I said, every other Sunday or Monday, the data set will be posted. I typically tweet it out, post it on LinkedIn. It's on the website, so you should get a notification one way or another. So what have we done so far? So we have a total of 13 challenges, actually 14, I guess, for counting this week. So we had our teaser week back in 2021, and now we've rolled out 12 weeks of challenges so far in 2022 with a new one that was just posted yesterday. I'm shocked to see these numbers, that we've had over 750 submissions and over 332 participants in just a short period of time. We've also had 4 visit of the days. Those colored in the light blue here, they actually have completed all challenges. So shout out to those 4 folks. I know Luigi is on vacation right now, but he said he's going to get week 11 and 12 done when he gets back. So he'll be added to that list. But right with this viz is out on Tableau Public. This viz actually got a viz of the day last week. So be sure to check that out. And it's just kind of a great repository to see how we're doing and really look at all the submissions for that week. So I'm just going to show some examples really quick. I know we're kind of running out of time, but this was our first week looking at build your best bar chart. So we were looking at Thanksgiving foods that are on your dinner table, and kind of the most important ones. So I saw a lot of this bar with the line where all our values are at the right-hand side. Then we had this awesome one on the right-hand side that showed us, Brandi, I almost think I would print this out and put it on, print it out for everybody at the Thanksgiving dinner table. Thought this one was a pretty cool one. Then we went into scatter plots, looking at the most winningest coaches in Division I men's basketball. So using annotations to call out a specific point, using clusters to kind of group things together. Using color purposefully for reinforcement, adding our annotations in there to call out specific things that we want our user to read and understand. We went into KPIs. This is one of my favorite ones because there's so many different ways that we can design KPIs, and I thought everything that turned out for this week was absolutely incredible. So we have our overall KPI looking at, and then we have kind of a sparkline that goes along with it. We have a comparison to a certain period, almost like a progress bar as well. I love this. What I really love about this one by Kevin Wee on the left is that the tile changes colors if it's going down. If it's going up, it's a blue color. If it's going down, it's orange. So I thought this was really cool and kind of a great way to add color to your visualization to communicate something. Same thing with this one on the right. We have parameters here that allow us to change between month to date, quarter to date, and year to date. But we also use color to change to show whether if it's increasing or decreasing. This is one of my favorites. This is our logo for Back to Viz Basics, and Elisa Davis, who is my co-lead on Back to Viz Basics, created this one for Park to Hold charts, looking at the folks going to Tableau conference and where they're all coming from. So she used our logo to create a donut chart that changed based off of different parameters and options. So I thought this one was super cool and getting really creative with our logo. All right, so our Pride Data Challenge. So for week 12, we had a data set that Lawrence mentioned, looking at the acceptance of homosexuality. And then for week 13, we just kicked off yesterday. The topic is creating a symbol map. So here's just some of the data. No one has submitted yet since we just posted yesterday, so I quickly pulled this together this morning. But our data is coming from the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index. And basically, this data helps the public understand a company's commitment to inclusive policies and practices for LGBTQ workers. So on the right-hand side, I just pulled out the top 20 Fortune 1000 companies. Looking at their rankings from 2021 to 2022, I think it's great to see that, majority of companies in this list, are 100% committed to these policies and practices. For some of the data in this data set, examples number 6, Berkshire Hathaway, some of the data hasn't been reported. So these are just estimated numbers based off of other reports. So we do have a flag in the data set to indicate that. But overall, I really tried to have folks stick to the topic. So we're creating a symbol map here, which you can just see a quick example in the bottom left. But really, it's open up for your own interpretation. Just really want people to focus on working with a simple data set and focusing on 1 or 2 things at a time within their visualization. So making sure that there's a proper title, playing around with different formats for the type of chart that we're working on, and then really just get folks in the habit of sharing out their visualizations through Tableau Public, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever it might be, just to get that feedback from others in the community. So overall, I'm super excited with all the feedback and amazing participation that we've had so far. If there's anything coming up, any holidays, different things that you're passionate about that you have a great data set on, we're always looking for that. So please reach out to me. I'd love to put a topic together around folks in the community and what it is that they want to viz, whether it's a topic about, creating a certain chart type, or it's data that we can work with, just to make aware to others. So please reach out to me. Always looking for that type of stuff. I think finding data is always the hardest part, especially something that's clean and I can easily download or scrape from a website. So, please, if you have something like that, share it with us. We're always looking to hear from those in the community and what they're passionate about. So overall, right, Back to Viz Basics is about keeping it simple. So Steve Jobs once said, simple can be harder than complex. You have to work hard to get your thinking clean to make it simple, but it's worth it in the end because once you get there, you can move mountains. So Back to Viz Basics is all about keeping things simple and focusing on one thing at a time. So going through your day, just try to keep things simple and take one step at a time. But if you have any questions about Back to Viz Basics, you can reach out to me on Twitter or through email at eric.balash@lovelytics.com. But I want to thank Alyssa and Chantilly and everyone for having me here today. And thank you all to everybody on the call for taking time out of your day to join us. So turn it back to Chantilly for closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Eric, and a really great project that you're running. I highly encourage everybody who's on today's call to go ahead and check it out. As I mentioned, I joined the community in 2016, even though I was using Tableau for 6 years, and it wasn't until I started participating in these community projects that my Tableau skill set and my knowledge about the tool really started to enhance. So I highly encourage you to participate, and it's a really great project that keeps it simple. So thank you all for attending today's call, and thanks again, Brandi, Eric, and Lawrence for sharing your time, insights, and knowledge. We hope you learned about ways data and analytics can be used to create a more inclusive, diverse, and equitable future for all. We hope that you're able to join us at our next Data Plus Diversity event on Thursday, July 28th. That is going to be about the rise of mental health. You can use the QR code that's on the screen to register, or you can visit the link. And with that, we hope that you enjoy the rest of your day or your evening, and be on the lookout for the recording and resources mentioned during this event. Thank you all so much, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.